Hi everyone, my name is Prerak Garg. I'm a senior director of cloud and AI strategy at Microsoft, uh, and I've been working on the AI strategy, and I've been working very closely with the healthcare team. So I'm here to talk about how we are applying large language models in healthcare. What are some of the trends and challenges that we see in this space? Uh, So I want to broadly cover four topics today. First of all, like just to set the context, how we or how I see the generative AI paradigm shift overall. Like what are the key changes it's doing in our industry? Second, how it is being applied in healthcare, and then we'll talk about one case study of DAX Copilot, which is a generative AI product which helps doctors and physicians to convert their conversations with patients into medical notes. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the challenges because we still haven't reached our North Star. So there's a lot of ground to cover. So these are the four things I want to cover today. And Atanas, I don't know how it happens. Like, do we take questions at the end of it, or like I'm happy to sort of take questions as we go along?
No, at the end we'll have the questions. I'm collecting questions if they have.
Okay, awesome. All right. So just to set the context in terms of the paradigm shift that generative AI has caused. So if you look at the GDP growth, it's deeply correlated with the pace of innovation. Like for thousands of years, our growth in GDP has been pretty slow because most of the humanity depended on agriculture. And then we started seeing major uptake with the start of the industrial revolution, first with steam engines, then internal combustion engine, and most recently with the information revolution. And now with AI, we are at the cusp of another acceleration in GDP growth, right? Like this is just starting. And as you could see, like with every technological revolution, the pace of growth has increased. So you can just imagine how fast GDP can grow with AI and the productivity gains it can give humanity. And also, like we're still in the very early stages of AI. Just to draw an analogy with the invention of electricity, like when Edison invented light bulb, in it itself did not solve all the problems. In fact, the hard yards were put in by the later generation of innovators who built things like television, microwave, computers, electric vehicles now, right? And similarly with AI, we pretty much had a light bulb movement with Chat GPT, uh, and we have slowly started moving from POC or experimentation phase into the adoption phase. We started seeing some interesting applications coming up, AI being integrated into existing applications, but we haven't really seen the second order, third order applications like AI native applications, completely new ways of doing things yet. And that's a huge opportunity for all of us to sort of think about like how AI will completely change the landscape. And also it'll happen relatively faster, right? As you would all know, like every day there is so much happening in AI and sort of moving at light speed, right? In just 12 months we have achieved so much. And you see it in the past trends also, right? Like every technological revolution, the pace of adoption is increasing. It took almost 60 years for landline phones to achieve 80% penetration. It took social media just 10 years, 10 to 12 years. And with Chat GPT, as you all know, right, like it became one of the most popular applications that we have all known. And it basically achieved 100 million users in less than 2 months. So it's going to move fast. And a lot of people ask me, like, why are we talking about AI all of a sudden? Like, AI has been around for quite some time. So I wanted to land, like, what is the key difference between large language models and traditional AI? So traditional AI was purpose built for a single task, right? Like you have a model which can do forecasting in a specific industry, or you have a model to do language translation from one language to a specific other language. How generative AI and especially these foundational models are different is they can do a range of things and they're really good at it. right? From say sentiment analysis to translation to summarization, and you name it, right? Like, and what it does, it gives a great starting point to a lot of organizations, because earlier an organization, if they want to build AI, they have to start from scratch. They have to hire a, a bunch of machine learning engineers, data scientists, AI researchers. And it's very hard because like there are only a few people who know this, right? And then they have to build a model from ground up, like go through the ML ops workflow, which again, it's super complex for a company which is making cereals to do all of it, right? For example, because it's not their core expertise. Now, what with foundational models, they can just use AI out of the box and solves like a large number of use cases, and we'll see like more number of SaaS applications being built, which will further simplify it for them. So that's a massive shift. And I'll skip these slides. But yeah, like the other massive shift that has happened because of large language models is because now every human being has become a developer in a way, right? Like if you think about the whole history of how programming languages have evolved, going back to the early days of computing, we used punch cards, which was a very manual and physical process. Only a few companies in the world could use punch cards. And then came the machine languages and assembly languages, uh, which made it somewhat easier. But still, like these were computer first languages. So very few people in the world could actually write code and operate computers. And then came higher level languages like C++, Java, and so on, which made computing even simpler. Uh, and now we have 40 million developers, and that led to the whole digital transformation revolution that we saw unfold over the last 30 years. And now with AI, like you all know, GPT-4 can pretty much write code like based on natural language instructions. So now AI can write code, and you can write code in natural language. What it means is like now we have the potential to go from 40 million developers to almost a billion developers. And initially, humans had to adapt to computers. Now, computers are adapting to human language. So it has massive implications in terms of how it'll impact every industry, because traditionally when we used to think about AI, we used to think about robotic automation in manufacturing and robots and so on. Now every industry, including industries like information technology and healthcare, are getting impacted, which like maybe 18 months ago a lot of people were skeptical about the potential of AI in these areas. So now I'll jump into what is the current state of large language models in healthcare. Uh, so as you might know that Google's DeepMind solved the protein folding problem a couple of years ago. It was considered to be one of the toughest challenges for human race, and they just solved it all, right? Like they predicted the structure of around 200 million proteins. Now this problem was already solved before large language models came to the fore. So why is large language model applicable here? Because they can actually do it 60 times faster. So Facebook's AI arm, they built a new model called ESM2, which is based on the large language model architecture, and this is 60 times faster. So now it has massive implications in terms of AI research. So you don't have to wait for days for AlphaFold to, you know, uh, give you an experimental outcome. Now you can basically iterate in a few minutes, and you can, so this really speeds up the pace of innovation that can happen in the medical field. And then there's a lot of debate going on whether, hey, like, do we need healthcare specific models or the general purpose models like GPT-4? Can they perform well in the domain of healthcare? And there are different point of views on this. But if you look at the benchmark so far, like the general purpose models have been sort of state of the art. For example, Google released MedPalm 2 a few months ago, some time back, and it was considered to be the most frontier model for the medical domain. But then with intelligent prompting around GPT-4, you can basically outperform it, you can achieve better outcomes. It does increase the computational cost a bit, but hey, like, it is still an open debate, whether you need healthcare specific models because of the complexity of this specific field, or general purpose models will suffice. So we are all eagerly waiting to see what GPT-5 uh, brings, and how this space will sort of evolve. Now, in terms of application to the clinical setting, right? Like, so even if it is not 100% accurate, it is still applicable to healthcare. And I was at the HIMSS conference a couple of months ago, which is one of the largest healthcare conferences in the world. 35,000 people attend the conference. And, a few years ago when I used to attend the conference, very few companies would be talking about AI at that point. And like in just 12 months, the scene has changed so much. Every company there was talking about how they're applying AI in healthcare, which was just unimaginable a few years ago. And this is a good case study, right? Like, this is a case of a 24-week pregnant woman. She had some mild symptoms of COVID. She asked her OB's office what she should do about it. Should she prescribe? Should she take Paxlovid, which is a prescription for COVID? Basically, the OB's office gave a very open-ended answer and didn't really give a strong recommendation. It's possible because they were, overburdened during COVID. They had thousands of patients, receiving, and the like nurses and the doctors just didn't have enough time to give a very thoughtful answer. So it didn't have empathy. It didn't have deeper analysis of patient-specific situation. No research or data backed uh, the analysis. And so let's see how GPT-4 can actually uh, do this. So this is GPT-4's answer, and this is much more empathetic. It presents evidence based because it was such a new evolving field at that time. So even doctors and nurses, they had to rely on the latest research. So it can actually link to the latest research and see what is the latest recommendation from the researchers in the field. So it sort of highlights the evidence based on some NIH panel recommendation and other studies, and gives a very specific recommendation which is targeted towards this patient situation. And it's humble, it's diplomatic. It still tells her to go and talk to the doctor, but like you can see like how if we give this technology to doctors, right, they can be more empathetic. And research shows that when a patient feels that the doctor is paying attention, hearing them, is empathetic, they're more likely to adhere to the treatment being prescribed, right? So even if like GPT-4 will not probably be used out of the box to give medical diagnosis, it can be a good starting point. It can help doctors draft better responses to patients, be empathetic, and I think that's a key component of the healthcare as well. Uh, Another case study that I want to talk about is DAX Copilot. It's a product that I've been working on over the last 12 to 18 months. Uh, it solves a very large problem in healthcare of physician burnout. And this is a major problem in the US specifically because doctors are legally mandated to record and transcribe the conversations that they have with patients, and it all has to go into the electronic health record, right? So if anybody is from the US, you would have noticed that when you go to a doctor's office, they're busy typing notes. As you're talking to them, they're just typing notes into the computer, right? And not only that, like they have to then, after office hours, refine them and put them back into the EHRs. And it takes almost 2 hours of their time every day, right? And it's like almost 25% of their time. And we have such long wait times for doctors to see patients. And it's like, you know, unimaginable, like how much burden it is causing on the healthcare system. Uh, as a result, a lot of doctors are facing burnout, and many of them, in fact, want to leave the occupation. It's also leading to losses in the industry for around $5 billion a year. And this is in the face of when we have a shortage of 90,000 physicians in the country, right? And finally, as I said earlier, when a patient feels that the doctor is not paying attention or listening, the experience goes for a toss. They're less likely to adhere to the treatment being prescribed, right? So it overall impacts the patient experience and the quality of healthcare being delivered. So let's see how generative AI is actually solving it. And sorry, before I go there, it's not just a problem for physicians, it's also for nurses, everybody in the healthcare system, because there's so many things they have to do. They have to look for patient charts, they have to complete the flow sheets, draft referral letters, and complete insurance work. So it's not like in this product we apply generative AI to one specific problem, but gen AIs can be applied to a range of challenges in the healthcare that we see now, and these are global challenges. And even if like drafting notes is a very US specific challenge, these are all global challenges. So it turns out that generative AI is actually perfect for this kind of application. What you need is speech to text API to record and transcribe the patient physician conversations. You can also use large language models to do it, but maybe a bit of an overkill to do that. And then you use large language models like GPT-4, or you can, like in our case, we built our own 2.5 billion parameter large language model using 4 million patient physician conversations. And it is much more efficient, much more accurate, because it's targeted towards a single thing, and goes back to the discussion that we were having earlier, that whether we need a general purpose model or we need task specific models in healthcare, because the power and accuracy is a little higher than rest of the industries. But yeah, like basically you build using this large language model, we generate a clinical note, which is then put into the EHR. So what used to take 10 minutes per patient encounter is now happening in 30 seconds. And imagine a doctor seeing 20 patients a day, how much time it is saving. They can see on an average 5 to 6 new patients. And imagine how much new capacity it can release in the healthcare system. So it looks trivial. And like, when a lot of people think about AI in healthcare, they straight away go to medical diagnosis. But it is still applicable and useful in so many other ways, even if it's not 100% accurate. uh, it solves large problems in healthcare that we all face today, right? And so here's an example. When a patient basically goes to the doctor asks, can they record the conversation? A single tap on the mobile app, the conversation is recorded and transcribed. There's a lot of banter, as you would know, right? Like when you go to doctor, maybe there's some conversation about some event, family, and so on, which is not medically relevant. And so this application is able to sort of extract all the medically relevant information and put it in the draft summary. It removes all the irrelevant information, so the doctor doesn't have to uh, think about what to put in the note, what not to put in the note, and just makes it super super simple, right? Like earlier, either the doctor has to remember the full conversation, type no rough notes in the EHR, and then at the end of the day, before bedtime, they have to then remember the whole conversation and extract the relevant information, put it into the notes that finally go into the EHR. It's a lot of like cognitive load on doctors, and it's giving them life back. Like it has brought back the joy in practicing medicine. That's what we have heard from like thousands of doctors who are already using this product in the US. Uh, so I'll skip the demo because I don't think it's a PDF, so it probably will not play. Uh, but the experience is pretty similar to how I described it. You go in an office, tap button, the conversation gets recorded, all the banter, etc., is filtered out automatically. It's available in the transcription if you want to see it, but not in the note. And when the uh, visit is done, you have to just again click a button. The note appears in the EHR. You're done. You have to just review it, sign it, and you're done. Hence, and the physicians who've been using it, 97% of them are saying they're more engaged in the patient visits. 70% of them already feel reduced feelings of burnout, and 85% like it so much that they will be disappointed if they no longer have access to this product, right? And we're continuously working on improving the accuracy, experience, adding more features. So we believe like this is just the start. Like we have started on the extreme left, right? Like this is an evolution of how we can add more customer value over time, right? A lot of people like directly go to the right hand side when you think about AI, and this is not only for healthcare, for any other use case, right? You have to start from where the tech is today and like solve one problem and then go and expand. So we have solved the problem of medical note taking, which is the initial POC phase, I would say, of application of health LLMs in healthcare. Then the next phase is the breadth phase. So now we're sort of slowly evolving into a co-pilot for providers. What it means is not only it'll be able to take notes, it'll be able to sort of extract the patient history, so you don't have to read like lengthy patient charts before the patient visits. You want to do some research, right? It'll sort of help you find the relevant research for that specific patient case. Uh, Very easily. Currently, doctors have to toggle between multiple screens, read a bunch of research papers. It'll be able to sort of just show the relevant research right at a click of a button. So that's the direction in which we're evolving. Eventually, we'll get to the end state vision. Like, it should serve as the first line uh, provider for a lot of cases, and this is specifically helpful maybe not in like developed countries but developing countries where you don't have physicians, and AI can be an amazing tool to give them the healthcare facilities that they all deserve, right? Even if there's not a doctor, at least if AI can do the first diagnosis and then triage cases accordingly, and this will have huge implications, especially in the developing world where you don't have enough physicians to treat patients in remote areas. I'm not saying it'll replace doctors. I think that is a long, long way to go, and AI has to have like some massive breakthroughs to achieve that end state. But it'll still release a lot of new capacity, which I think is generally beneficial for the greater good of humanity. And so yeah, this is the current one of the challenges. Like so, foundational models are really good at a lot of things, right? Like as we saw, GPT-4 can be more empathetic, uh, and it was able to sort of highlight the relevant research and give a strong recommendation. But still, like we can't rely on it because it's not medically trained. We don't know whether it can hallucinate and give the wrong answer, and we can't afford such risks in healthcare. On the other hand, we built a very task specific large language model to to generate medical notes, which is really good at it, but it can't do other things like GPT-4 can do. What we need is a universal agent which can do both, and we are a little bit further from that vision. So, terms of challenges of LLMs in healthcare, first is risk, right? We're all concerned about patient security, safety, privacy. So when you're using large language models, first of all, of course, the data should not be used to train large language models uh, without patient permission, but also like it should not be leaked uh, and go in places where we don't want it to go. Second is the cost. Using these models is still very expensive. It's getting progressively cheaper. As you all know, GPT-4o is like 2 times cheaper than GPT-4. Third is performance. We talked about in healthcare, the bar is so high, the accuracy has to be super, super high. And finally, operationalization, which means we have to reduce hallucination. It has to become more predictable because currently AI outcome is not very predictable, which reduces the applicability in healthcare setting because it can give different answers, which also is a feature of AI in a way because the way it is built, it hallucinates. But we need to sort of limit those hallucinations to make it more operational in healthcare. And as you can see, GPT-4 has a bunch of limitations in healthcare. It cannot do medical imaging, which is a huge field right now. And in fact, there is no foundational model that can do imaging diagnosis across a range of uh, you know uh, modalities like MRI, X-rays, and so on. So you have around 500 FDA approved model. One model will, and these are not like large language models, but traditional convolutional neural networks or CNNs, uh, which will only do one thing really well, right? Like it could be chest X-rays, then you have another model for hand X-rays and so on. And GPT-4 can't do it. Then it also doesn't have a good understanding of the longitudinal patient data. What it means is the whole history, right? Like there is a progression to any symptom or any disease. For example, you go from stage 1 to stage 4 of cancer, and a lot of information that is hidden, and that the doctor has to interpret based on how a case is progressing. Every time you go to a doctor, it's a it's basically one event in that longitudinal history, and GPT-4 cannot reason over this longitudinal history right now because it doesn't have a good sense of the time series, if you will, and how to correlate different pieces of information on that. Also, it doesn't have the latest knowledge of all the medical advancements. In the example that I showed earlier, it was Bing. So Bing was, it uses GPT-4 under the hood, but it also has the search functionality. So it is able to sort of pull the relevant and the latest research and then use GPT-4 to sort of summarize it and put it in the context of the specific question being asked. But GPT-4 in itself doesn't, it's not a search engine. It doesn't have the latest medical knowledge, and there's so much happening every day. And the AI that we can actually use in operations, in healthcare operations, has to have that capability. Finally, it's trained on internet, as you all know, right? Like so, it'll have the biases and stereotypes that are there in our society, because that's also reflected in the internet data and other data that we use. So how do we prevent that? I think OpenAI has done an amazing job with chat gpt in not reflecting those biases. uh, but in healthcare, again, the bar is a bit higher, and there could be some biases which we don't even know about, right? And because the foundational models are trained on the human knowledge, and those biases could be infused in the human knowledge, and we don't even see it. So it has to be, the AI has to be very carefully built so that it doesn't have any of those biases. So what's the North Star? So the North Star in healthcare will be a general purpose healthcare foundational model. It all starts with data, so it can have data from patients, proprietary data, public data, experimental data, biobank data, right? And there's so much data in healthcare, and uh, so yeah, and uh, yeah, like so you have all this data. What we need is an ability to sort of reason across this different these different sources of data, different data modalities, like you have cells, molecules, images, pathology data. And the challenge is we currently can't do that because we don't have all the interactions between these different modalities mapped, right? But like that's the end state vision. There's a foundational model which can reason over all these different data sources and so on and so forth. There are specific challenges why we can't do it, because as I said, like it's multimodal. So you have experimental data, then you have RNA data, molecule data, images, and then it's also very low fidelity, and we are not able to sort of map interaction between these different modalities and types of data. For example, how do you go from cells to molecules to full organs and how they behave? This is we don't have all the data and understanding of these interactions and correlations between these different modalities as of today. So yeah, I want to leave you all with final thoughts. So I think we talked about healthcare. What I'm saying here is uh, LLMs are broadly applicable across all industries, and you all have to think about how how you can use LLMs for specific use case in your industry, right? And there are two ways. One is you can use a copilot, which is pre-built. It's mostly for horizontal use cases, helps you unlock productivity. Or you can build your own capability, build your own copilot for your specific use case. Now, as we talked about, like a lot of people go to the final state of AI and they sort of struggle because they don't find the product market fit. So I want to leave you all with a framework that we found it very helpful at Microsoft in building Copilot, especially GitHub Copilot, right? So start with a very high value use case that can give a lot of productivity gains, right? So start with an MVP. Don't overshoot and don't go very wide. Like go really deep into one specific area. Second, once you figure out that use case, then nail it, right? Like don't try to overshoot the tech, don't try to overpromise, and try to minimize the change. Because uh, yeah, like consumers or customers will not move to completely new UI. So try to introduce AI where they are right now, right? You have to take them take them along on this journey before they change their behavior, and continuously iterate. And finally, like it's all about scaling. So once you have the product market fit, like with one use case, now you can expand to other adjacencies. The way we are doing with with Dax Copilot, we started with note taking. Now we're expanding to other areas. We're expanding it to nurses, expanding it to medical coding, uh, and so on and so forth, right? And when you scale, then you have to manage costs as well. So maybe when you start with a foundational model like GPT-4, but when you want to scale it, it could be super expensive to serve uh, hundreds of millions of customers with GPT-4. So maybe now you want to optimize costs, use different models, task specific models for certain things, and then foundational models for things where you need some general intelligence. So I think that's all from my side. I know we are already 3 minutes over. Sorry for the delay in the start of the presentation, but I tried to cover most of the content. I'm happy to have any questions that the audience might have.